Why is Japan's economy awful? Japan, once the shining example of rapid growth and groundbreaking technology, has faced a series of economic struggles for decades. You might wonder, how did a country that soared to global heights suddenly hit a wall? What happened to the booming industries and skyrocketing GDP? The lost decades, spanning from the 1990s to the 2010s, saw Japan's economy stall, with GDP growth barely inching forward, deflation creeping in, and wages stagnating. So, where did things go wrong? Let's dig into it. After World War II, Japan faced total destruction. Its cities leveled, its industries in ruins, and the economy was barely hanging. But after some time, through determination and strategic intervention, the country began its slow march toward rebuilding with the help of the United States. From 1945 to 1952, under American occupation, General Douglas MacArthur led reforms that reshaped Japan's government and economy. Land reforms redistributed land to farmers, boosting agriculture and creating a more balanced economy. The U.S. also provided financial aid through programs like the Mutual Security Assistance Program and military contracts during the Korean War, which helped Japan's factories ramp up production. Additionally, the U.S. helped Japan enter global trade, with American companies buying Japanese goods and offering access to technology. Japan's educational system was restructured to focus on math, science, and technology, creating a skilled workforce. By the late 1950s and early 1960s, Japan was well on its way to becoming an industrial powerhouse, thanks in large part to American support. By the 1970s, Japan had transformed itself into a manufacturing powerhouse, with companies like Toyota, Sony, and Panasonic leading the charge in automobiles, electronics, and innovation. The country's economy surged, bolstered by technology and efficient production methods, and Japan quickly became a dominant force in the global market. The 1980s were a golden age for Japan. The country's economy was on fire, GDP was soaring, and asset prices were hitting crazy heights. The stock market was buzzing, and real estate prices were through the roof, all fueled by speculation and easy credit. Japan seemed unstoppable, a beacon of high-tech innovation and luxury living. But like all good things, this rapid growth couldn't last forever. In 1989, the bubble popped. Real estate and stock prices plummeted, and suddenly, Japan's economy skydived. What followed wasn't just a blip. It triggered a full-blown banking crisis. Banks found themselves drowning in bad loans from all the risky lending of the past years. The financial sector, which had once been the backbone of Japan's rise, became a heavy burden, unable to recover or fuel any more growth. The government stepped in, trying to stabilize things, but the damage was already done. Japan was now in for a long, hard economic slump. The 1990s saw Japan's economy in a state of paralysis. Despite efforts by the government and central bank to stimulate growth, Japan faced a prolonged era of deflation. Deflation made it more expensive to service debt, causing consumers to delay purchases and businesses to hesitate in making new investments. The country found itself stuck in a vicious cycle. Falling prices led to lower consumer spending, which in turn led to more deflation. Economic growth stagnated, and the hopes of a quick recovery faded. During this time, Japan also faced demographic challenges that compounded its economic woes. The country's aging population began to take center stage. With one of the highest life expectancies in the world and a low birth rate, Japan found itself with a rapidly shrinking workforce. This demographic shift placed increasing pressure on social welfare systems and reduced Japan's economic productivity. Fewer young people entering the workforce meant a smaller labor pool, particularly in rural areas, where labor shortages became a significant issue. The country faced a growing dependency ratio, with fewer workers supporting an expanding elderly population. The effects of these changes were far-reaching, impacting everything from economic productivity to consumer spending. Meanwhile, wages remained stagnant. Despite occasional periods of recovery, real wages for Japanese workers barely increased over the next 3 decades. Without a significant rise in wages, consumer spending stayed subdued. Households, wary of the future, hesitated to spend, and businesses lacked the confidence to invest or expand. Japan's economy became trapped in a cycle of low growth, low wages, and low consumer confidence, a situation that would last far longer than anyone had expected. Japan's structural issues, such as rigid labor markets and an over-regulated business environment, also hindered its ability to adapt to a changing global economy. In the 1990s and 2000s, Japan struggled to cope with increasingly stiff competition from emerging economies like China and South Korea. Despite its technological prowess, Japan's business environment remained sluggish and resistant to change, weighed down by bureaucratic inefficiency and a lack of innovation in key sectors. As a result, Japanese consumers paid some of the highest prices for goods and services, making it harder for businesses to stay competitive on the global stage. By the 2000s and into the 2010s, Japan's government debt had reached unrivaled levels. The need to stimulate the economy during periods of recession led to heavy borrowing, and the government's fiscal position became increasingly fragile. High debt levels limited the government's ability to implement policies aimed at stimulating growth, and as Social Security and debt servicing costs rose, Japan's fiscal situation worsened. The effects of these economic crises were compounded by natural disasters, such as the 2011 earthquake and tsunami, and the global recession that followed the 2008 financial crisis. These events further strained Japan's economy, but the most significant threat remained its aging population. Fast forward to 2024, and Japan finds itself cautiously optimistic about the future. The government forecasts that the economy will reach full capacity in the upcoming fiscal year for the first time in 7 years. With a tight labor market and a slight uptick in demand, Japan's output may surpass its potential for the first time in over a decade. However, there are still significant challenges on the horizon. The country's labor force has plateaued at around 69 million workers, and Japan continues to face persistent labor shortages, particularly in rural areas. The demographic trends that have plagued Japan for decades are still in full effect, and it remains to be seen whether Japan can truly turn the page on its economic struggles.